Hello. Today we're going to talk about setting up a client for Zero Ledger and getting their information into that ledger account and then actually exporting that information out to Crosslink. So to start off, we're going to talk about My Green Zero and adding an organization from there. So you're in your partner edition of Zero, which is My Green Zero. I'm in my practice, Jacqueline Velez Zero. And this is basically where I can see all of the clients that I'm working with. We're going to click on New Organization. And this is going to be kind of the first step to set up a ledger account. So I'm going to just put in a dummy name. And I'm going to click on Buy Now to add this to my billing account and to select the packages. You will notice that you are defaulted to these business plans, which you might be more familiar with the kind of the more standard accounts that small businesses will use. But we also have what we call partner edition plans. So once it defaults here, you're going to have to click here onto partner edition plans to select this type. So we're going to talk about Ledger. We're going to select the Ledger package. So basically, it kind of spells it out here. There are no bank feeds allowed. So if maybe your client needs a bank feed, this might not be the best option for you. Also, it's good for individuals. Business maybe would probably want maybe one of the more advanced business plans. And basically, it has a little bit more of a limited view for as far as reporting and access that clients have. So let's say that that works for you, and let's hit continue. I'm going to add it to my billing for my practice. Confirm. Okay, so now I'm actually going through the setup wizard. I'm going to click on next. And here's basically going to ask me some of the details about my business or my organization. So here you can actually click which kind of organization you're working with. So let's just say we're looking at a sole proprietor right now, but you'll see that there's so many different organization types. You could do S corporation, a partnership, or corporation. Those might be some of the ones you would use. We're going to click on sole proprietor. And now we have financial settings. Our default financial year end is December 31st, which is fine. I'm going to put our tax basis as cash. And if you have a tax ID number, you can go ahead and put that there, and then maybe the tax period if you have that as well. I'm going to put this as a annual tax period. And I'm not going to put any tax defaults for sales tax or purchases tax. And we're going to assume that the time zone is correct as well. So here it's asking me if I want to set up our invoicing. I'm going to go to no, skip this step because we're not going to be using invoicing for this ledger account. And this is basically where you would invite users into your organization. If you possibly have a person you want to use the account as read-only, or maybe another accountant or somebody in your practice that needs to have access, you would do it from here. Let's go to next. And then here we're going to have actually the tax rates that you would use on invoices and transactions in Zero. We're going to bypass this. Okay, so here's an important step. This is the chart of accounts. So you have two options here. You can use the default chart of accounts that comes with Zero, which usually works really, really well for small businesses, or you can import a file from Zero. So you can actually have a template that you might want to go ahead and import into Zero depending on your needs. So you can have a template that actually has specific accounts in there for different expenses that you might encounter based on the transactions that you are expecting to be in there. Or, like I said, you could use a default chart of accounts and modify from there. I have a good example for a more customized chart of accounts that you can use for a Schedule C client. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to do import from file. But first, I'm going to show you what that Schedule C chart of accounts looks like so that we can understand what we're putting in. So this is the chart of accounts that I actually set up in advance. And I can actually share this with you all if you'd like. So basically, you see that there are some of the required accounts that Xero has. But in addition, we also have these specific expense categories that would be required of a Schedule C client. So you might recognize these expense categories. And here you can see that I have some descriptions, and here you have an option to enter a balance. So if perhaps you already knew the dollar amount of all these expenses for the year, then you could possibly enter those balances in here without having to enter them in manually somewhere else in Xero. I'm not going to enter any balances. I'm just going to enter it as is. So I'm telling you to import from file. Let's go to next. So what system am I importing from? So that template was formatted for Xero. And if you also need an example of that template, just like a default one, you can click here and you can download that. So let's look at that. So this is going to be kind of more of the generic chart of accounts, and you can see it has a lot more accounts and is kind of suited more for a small business, which might still be applicable in your situation depending on who you're working with. So next question is it's asking me if I'm importing account balances. So if you remember just a moment ago, I was showing you that you can actually add a balance here. If you know the amount, that's a good way to get your data into Xero. So I'm going to hit browse and find where I have that chart of accounts. I'm going to click on import. So basically, it looks like this was successful. I have 27 accounts that were on my spreadsheet that went through, 3 additional system accounts that were added based on Xero's system required accounts. So that's fine. Okay, great. And now I have this customized chart of accounts for that Schedule C client that I need. It's perfect. And this is just a warning that I don't have any bank accounts added on this chart of accounts. You can always add a bank account from that chart of accounts that you import in through that template. In this instance, I'm going to continue anyway because we're going to add our bank account later. I'm going to set my conversion date to January 2017, and I'm going to click on next. And now it's asking me what my balances were as of December 31st, 2016. So if you didn't put the balances in with your chart of accounts and you know what the balances are, then you can enter them here if you'd like. You can click on here at show all accounts and start typing in all of these expenses if you happen to know them. You can also lock the balances here so that nobody can make any changes to this information before December 31st, 2016. But we're going to assume in this instance that I do not know what the balances are and that we need to actually enter the transactions into Xero. Setup is complete for now, and we're going to go to finish. I do want to make a quick note that any of these settings that you've put in from this setup wizard, you can actually change. Go to settings, general settings. For example, you can change the conversion balances, that screen we were just at. You can also invite users from here. So just a little FYI. So we're going to go to accounts, bank accounts. So why am I going here? Because I want to show you how to add transactions into this ledger account, and I want to show you how to get that information in here through kind of a faster way. So since we're trying to get our transactions into Xero, we're going to use either a real bank account or we're going to actually create this template to make it look like a bank account just to get the transactions in there. So you might actually have the transactions from the bank that your client has provided you. So if perhaps you have all of those client and those transactions, all of those statements, then you can actually add them in here. Unfortunately, if you're using a ledger account, you can't do a bank feed. But if you'd like to do bank feed, you could do that on perhaps one of the higher packages. But we're going to go ahead and just create a bank account. Okay, so that bank account is set up. So this account, there's, like I said, there's two instances that can happen here. You could actually have the bank account information, and this is actually a real live account that perhaps you don't have a bank feed for. So you're going to import the statements in through a CSV or maybe a different format. So we're going to go to import statement. And these are all of the different formats that are allowed for the ledger. In this instance, I'm going to talk about our CSV template. I'm going to download that as an example. And here, basically, all you need as a minimal requirement for this template is the date and the amount columns. So if you were actually working with any kind of maybe statements that happen throughout the year, you could actually copy and paste all of those transactions in here to get them into zero. But let's say perhaps you don't have that information and maybe you have a client that's shoebox, you can also manually type it in. So let's say you have some transactions in from September, for a certain amount, and the payee might be, some kind of expense. So that's how you would do it. The amounts are going to be positive for a money received in the bank, and then negative for money that's coming out of the bank. So it's not necessarily in debit and credit format for negatives and positives for this example, for this template. You might see other templates that have debits and credits as positives and negatives, but this one is receive money into the bank is positive, spend money out of the bank is negative. So just keep that in mind. So like I said here, you could either import a CSV from copying and pasting from an actual statement, or you can actually just enter in transactions like I just typed in. So I'm going to show you one that's kind of more formatted. So you'll notice here I've actually added some columns on mine. So in addition to actually entering in the date and the amount, I have actually went ahead and added these two columns with the account and tax type, which are necessary if you're going to put these two in. And I'm actually coding them from here. So you can type in the account number based on your chart of accounts and actually go ahead and code each transaction if you don't want to go through the reconciliation process in Xero. So let's import a template like the example I showed you. And now basically the system is asking us how to assign each column that was in this template, and it's asking how to read it. So you can see this is a little bit self-explanatory. So the date is going to be the transaction date, the amount is going to be the amount in the transaction, and if you need to change it, you can always go down to this menu. I would recommend to set this up even if you don't have any data in there, because this is saved for the first time you do an import into this bank account, and you don't have to do it again, but it saves these settings you put in. So I'd go ahead and assign each column even if there's no information here. I'm going to hit save. And this is just basically telling me that I have imported 3 statement lines, none of which were duplicates, and then 3 entered directly as reconciled. So you'll see here, like I said, these 3 lines have an account number that is in that chart of accounts that I showed you. I can actually show you that in the chart of accounts. So for example, that 6140 that was in that template, it's all the same accounts, right? So I've actually uploaded a bank statement and already reconciled. Perhaps you don't know this information, and we could talk about how that would work as well. So you'll see, since I coded it already, I don't have anything to do on the reconciler cash coding columns. Tabs. And the bank statement tab is going to be those lines that I manually entered. And since I coded them in 0, they're going to be under this account transactions tab, which is corresponding to what is in 0, and they're reconciled. Okay, but let's say perhaps we don't have this account number. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to maybe change the amounts a little bit so it doesn't look like a duplicate. I'm going to go to Manage Account, import a statement, find that same file. I'm going to click on Import. And now I have, as you might be aware of what it looks like, I have 3 lines that came in that are not reconciled that I can go ahead and reconcile either by doing the match transactions exercise on this first tab, or you can look at cash coding and do it this way. So this is a fast way to get your transactions into 0. So just depending on what the circumstances are with your client, you can either copy and paste a template, copy and paste a bank statement into the CSV template. You can use a different one of our formats that I showed you to import a statement, or you can just type it in as I've showed you how to do. But let's say perhaps your client, doesn't do it that way. That you might find it easier to do it in this next way that I show you. So you could actually go to Files, which is this little icon on the top, and you can copy and paste this file name. This email address for sending files. And you can actually have your clients either email here or upload files into here directly. So let's see what this looks like. So like I said, you can copy this address. So you can either highlight and copy or click this gear signal sign and go to copy to clipboard. And you can actually just email it as if you would email anything else. And I'm emailing it straight to this inbox. And I have a detailed receipt attached, and I'm going to hit send. Then I'm going to go ahead and refresh. Might take a moment. Okay, it's not there quite yet, but for sake of time, I'm going to upload. I'm going to upload a file. And basically you could go into here and pick the file that you have. And see, actually, I just uploaded that file and that transaction that I emailed came through. And it's just saying that it came through by email. And you can actually see the email that I just sent. So I should have maybe had more patience than 1 minute. But the reason why I want to show you this is because from here, you could actually click on this. And let's say that you want to create transactions based on these receipts. that your client is sending you. You can actually click on the receipt, and you can add to a new spend money. So let's say this is an expense that goes on that corresponds with an account that is on that Schedule C chart of accounts, and you can actually start doing that spend money. So you have to pick a bank account. So we're going to pick that checking account. We're going to hit select. And what's cool about this is that you can actually see the receipt on the left side here. And that'll kind of help guide you, like, oh, if you forgot the dollar amount or, any quantity information, you could do it that way. So we spent money at Ashtanga Yoga Houston. No reference. And this is where you would actually code it. So this is kind of how you'd get that transaction added into Xero using the spend money and putting in those chart of accounts, that Schedule C chart of accounts that I showed you previously. So let's say this is actually a contractor fee, right? An expense. So then you have that already there as an account because we added that in our chart of accounts. And from there, we're just adding that transaction. So, what's the point of all this? Why are we adding all these transactions into Xero? Well, of course, we're trying to create these financial statements. We're trying to get this data in here so that we can get these financial statements, get our final numbers for the year, and possibly do a tax return or be able to use this information. So, I'll show you kind of where that goes in just a moment. But first, I want to show you that I have created a spend money transaction in Xero. And I actually haven't imported a bank statement to match it. So, for example, if you had maybe a bank feed or if you imported a bank statement in here manually, then it would come up on the left as an amount spent and the bank that came out of the bank itself. But in this instance, we actually might not have that bank information. The bank statement may never come through. So I'm going to show you how to manually reconcile this. And this is a very special case, meaning that we're not ever going to have that bank statement. And maybe this is an after the fact client. So typically you would have a manually reconcile button. So since we're doing this so it's typically not advised to manually reconcile because you typically want a bank statement to match the items in Xero to reconcile so they match, right? You want real life to match what you have in Xero, of course, right? But in this example, that information isn't there. We're doing it after the fact. This is a special example. We're not using it in the most normal way that Xero is intended for. So we're going to actually go to this question mark and first to enable mark as reconciled. So this will enable a button that will allow you to manually reconcile an account. So now you see this little more button showed up. So now that transaction that I created from that spend money screen, I'm going to mark as reconciled. And like I said, it's going to warn you, and it's not the most recommended way to use the system, but we're doing it a little bit different. So we're going to mark as reconciled because we're aware of that. And now you have that file, that dollar amount of money spent that's available to you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the reports. So once you have all of these transactions reconciled, so either it could be from the bank statement itself or a CSV that you added or from spend money transactions that you have entered, you want to make sure that this is reconciled. So let's just assume that this is all correct. And we are done reconciling. Now you're ready to run a report and kind of look at what your dollar amounts are. So we're going to go to reports, all reports. And perhaps you'd want to run a trial balance for the period that you're looking at. So right now I'm looking as of today's date. Let's see if maybe perhaps you want to look at December 31st. I doubt I have any transactions in there. But let's talk about maybe looking at a balance sheet. We're going to go to reports, all reports, go to balance sheet. So you'll notice that this balance sheet is starred as default. That's an older version of our balance sheet. I'm actually going to click on the new one that has that little new, and I'm going to click the star in order to make it come down as our favorites. I'm going to do a balance sheet as of today. And now you can see that everything came in. You know, we have that checking account dollar amount, and then perhaps we have some revenue that came in. So that's your equity for your current year earnings. Maybe a better example would be an income statement. So we'll go to reports, all reports, and now you can go to income statement, and same thing. The older income statement is starred as a favorite. We're going to actually star the new one. And we are looking at this year, and you can see all of these expenses that came in, and then business income, which this would be a perfect income statement for perhaps a Schedule C client. So the final kind of step to this is going to be where you have your information in here, you have your financial statements, and you're confident in that you have all of the information. So now we're going to actually we're ready to go ahead and start filing our taxes. So preparing our taxes. So we're going to go to advisor and then export. And from here, you can actually select quite a few different types of software. But let's say you want to use Crosslink. And since that's the last fiscal year, this is going to default to December 31st, 2016. And you can actually download the CSV, which is the format that Crosslink requires in order to upload. And now, obviously, you can see I don't have that much information, but now you can see that I would have this. This is the name of my organization. It's an income statement as of February 8th. Just trying to see if I'll get more data if I open it up a little bit. And yes, you see those expenses that I entered for February come in. So this is going to be your income statement for the period that you selected and the format of Crosslink, which is kind of reminding you of here that's formatted for Crosslink and it's ready to be uploaded into their system. So from this point on, you could actually go into Crosslink and upload this formatted file. And that actually concludes the part for zero. So this concludes this little training, and I hope that this was helpful for you. And yep, that's it for now. Thank you so much.